whole notion of mandates from the federal government, but they're especially bad when it comes to the federal government mandating the state of South Carolina or Texas or wherever and say, you will, under penalty of law, provide free education and free medical care, and you will have bilingualism, and they will be on food stamps, and they will be in the Social Security system. Those mandates aren't part of the Constitution, and they're not part of our system. So if we didn't have that, we would have a much healthier economy. If we had sound money and free markets and minimal taxes, believe me, the immigration problem would be minimal at all, especially if there was no promise to be benefits for being illegal. People would come in legally, and if we needed workers or whatever, they would come, and it would be quite a bit different. Right now, it's the combination of the illegality of immigration versus the way the people in this country are feeling about the economy. And a lot of people are threatened, justifiably, with our economy. The statistics are out there, and we can't ignore that. And I see that linked to our spending and our taxes and our inflation and all these things that we have to put up with. But the problems are rather significant. A crisis in the dollar is something we really don't want. And we don't want to see that coming. But the solutions aren't that complicated. We've gotten ourselves in a mess because we haven't had enough people in Washington respect the Constitution. We all take an oath of office, military, and we serve in government to obey the Constitution. And that means we need to go back to it. The problems came from not following it. Going back should solve the problems. And we won't have nearly as tough a time as some other countries, say with the Russians and other countries. They don't have the traditions we have. We have great traditions. We do understand contract law. We understand property rights. And we understand that once we didn't have an income tax, we have it, but we don't follow it, the Bill of Rights. And then these other this is a new revolution. This is the restoration of the original one, to go back to our roots and just follow the rules, and we have a lot to do. I am concerned about this perpetual idea that we have perpetual enemies that aren't nearly as dangerous as some might think. And under this system where we have to look around every corner because we think there's going to be a terrorist and there's Islamofascism around the world, we have to go after them, we have to attack countries that are smaller. I mean, we can go on and on. But what that breeds into is a sense of fear where too many Americans are willing to give up their liberties for safety. I've heard too often people come up and say, you know, you're right, I want all my liberties, but if I'm dead, I won't, be able to, enjoy these liberties. The whole point is we're not safer by giving up our liberties. And we the greatest threat under a wartime mentality, whether it was World War I or II or currently what's going on, is the fact that civil liberties are violated. And we take an oath, I take very seriously, that we swear to uphold the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The our greatest threat to our country today is that we are undermining our civil liberties, our privacy. There's a move on now to have a national ID card. I totally reject the notion that we have to carry our papers every place we go. We don't need the national ID. Over many months, if not years, been asked to enter into a race like this, and I have always been reluctant. Even up to a year ago, I was still very, very reluctant, had not made the decision. A lot of people persuaded me to do it, but the reason I was reluctant was simply that I wasn't sure whether I could deliver the message well enough. And never doubted for a minute the message and the philosophy and the principles that made this country great. No doubt in my mind whatsoever how wonderful and how important that is. At the same time, I didn't know how many people were there that knew about it and understood it and studied about it and knew about the gold standard, knew about a time when we could live without an income tax and all these things. And it was sort of looking for the remnant. How big was the remnant? And then, of course, we know we can't count the remnant. I didn't know about that. And also, I didn't know about the young people. How would they respond? Do they care? You know, I say, kids don't care. They play video games. That's all they do with the internet. Guess what? They do other things with the internet. And our Constitution, how important it is, and putting full trust in individuals, releasing creative energy of all of us, and we will have this freedom and prosperity. Not a perfect world, but at least better than a tyrannical society that I'm afraid that we might get. But to understand how important liberty is, we have to understand where our life comes from. Because I can defend civil liberties sometimes in an uncomfortable fashion, but because a lot of people don't always use their liberties as they should, but I will still defend liberty. But you can't defend liberty to that degree if you don't defend all life, both born and unborn. There's no doubt in my life that there is a legal entity deserving protection of life before birth. I am an OB doctor. I understand very clearly my obligations. I also understand that if I make a mistake in any time during pregnancy and I have the responsibility of taking care of two people, I'm liable. And if there's an injury or an accident or a violent act, when the unborn is killed, there's legal repercussions. And the establishment of inheritance rights comes at conception. So there is a legal entity. The one thing that I do, though, say about this is I don't like the approach of centralized government, and I like our republic, and difficult issues should be dealt with locally. I don't think the federal government should be doing it. Your state should have the right to deal with that by yourself, and the federal court should be denied jurisdiction to overrule anything you do at the local level. Optimistic about how things are going, because they said the first step in correcting mistakes is discovering our mistakes. So I've always marveled that I go into groups and talk like this and tell you about all the problems. And I figure, well, you know, why is everybody so hopeful? And the truth is the problems have to be discovered once you know they're there, and then we look at the answers, and even though we don't overly dwell and emphasize more the problems, the answers aren't that complicated, and that is why this is a message of hope. It's a message of hope to me. It's an American position, and it's something that if we did our job right, and if we really set an example for the world, our message would be spread around the world without the use of force. People would want to emulate us. That is my goal. Thank you.